Welcome to the Lost in Disclosure. Tonight, we drift into the dark water. There is a place on Earth where sunlight has never reached, where the weight of the world presses down with such force that steel bends like paper, and stone groans under pressures no human body could withstand. It is a realm of absolute cold, absolute darkness, and absolute silence. The deep ocean floor is not merely the bottom of the sea. It is the edge of another world, one that exists in parallel to our own, separated only by miles of black water and the limits of human courage. Here, in this soundless deep, time moves differently. Currents drift like slow breath. Sediment falls like snow that will never melt. Creatures without eyes glide through the void, navigating by senses we cannot name. And in this eternal twilight, where the living and the dead settle side by side into the mud, something waits. It was not supposed to be there. No map predicted it, no legend warned of it. Yet there it rests, impossibly, beneath 275 feet of cold Baltic water, a circular structure, smooth and deliberate, its edges too precise for nature's hand, its presence too strange for easy dismissal. The ocean does not give up its secrets willingly. It holds them close, wrapped in pressure and darkness, guarded by silence. But sometimes, when technology reaches far enough and curiosity pushes hard enough, the veil lifts just slightly, and what lies beneath is not always what we expect. This is not a story of certainty. It is not a tale with clear heroes or definitive answers. It is instead a meditation on discovery itself, on the moment when the known world cracks open just a little, and something else looks back at us from the depths. Some call it a natural formation. Others whisper of ancient civilizations lost to time and tide, and a few, a quiet, persistent few, suggest it came from somewhere else entirely. But before theories, before explanations, before belief or doubt, there was simply the image on the screen. A sonar pulse returning from the seabed, carrying with it a shape that should not exist. A perfect disk, resting in the mud, as if waiting to be found. The deep ocean is not empty. It is full of forgetting, full of everything humanity has dropped, lost, or buried beneath the waves. Ships and sailors, cities and civilizations, memories and myths, all of it sinking, slowly, into the soft embrace of the abyss. And perhaps, just perhaps, something else has fallen there too. Something that remembers what we have forgotten.
The year was 2011. And the Baltic Sea stretched dark and cold beneath an overcast summer sky. A small crew of Swedish ocean explorers moved steadily across the water, their vessel cutting through the waves with quiet determination. They were not looking for mysteries. They were salvagers, hunters of shipwrecks, scanning the seabed for the broken remains of vessels lost to storm and war. The Baltic is rich with such graves, hundreds of years of maritime tragedy resting just beyond the reach of daylight. The sonar hummed its steady rhythm, sending sound waves down into the darkness and waiting for the echoes to return. Most of what came back was familiar: flat expanses of mud, scattered rock formations, the occasional jagged silhouette of a sunken hull. But then, without warning, the screen flickered with something different. At first, they thought it was an error, a glitch in the equipment, perhaps, or interference from some unknown source. But the image remained, sharp and insistent. A circular structure, approximately 60 meters in diameter, resting on the ocean floor like a coin dropped onto velvet. Its edges were smooth, almost geometrical. Behind it, stretching for nearly 400 meters, was a trail, a deep gouge in the seabed, as if the object had been dragged or had carved its path through the mud in some long-ago descent. The crew exchanged glances. In all their years of exploration, they had never seen anything quite like this.
They circled back, scanning the area again. The image did not change. The object remained, solid and undeniable, its shape too perfect for comfort. One of the divers later described the feeling that settled over the boat in that moment, a strange mixture of excitement and unease, the kind that comes when you realize you have stumbled onto something that exists outside the boundaries of normal experience. The team leader, a veteran of Baltic salvage operations, studied the sonar reading in silence. He had seen meteor impacts, glacial deposits, even unexploded ordnance from World War II. But this was different. The symmetry was too deliberate, the trail too defined, and the size, 60 meters across, was enormous, far larger than any shipwreck they had encountered.
When the divers finally descended, months after that first sonar pulse, they carried with them the weight of expectation and the cold certainty of the unknown. The water closed around them like a fist, squeezing light and warmth away with every meter of depth. At 85 meters, the world is reduced to what your dive light can illuminate, a small sphere of visibility in an ocean of black. The object emerged from the gloom like a dream half remembered. It was massive, far larger than the sonar images had suggested, its presence dominating the seabed with a quiet, undeniable authority. The surface was not smooth metal as some had speculated, but stone, or something like stone, dark, porous, textured in a way that seemed both ancient and strangely deliberate. In places, the surface appeared almost polished, as if worn by currents or shaped by hands. In others, it was rough, fractured, revealing layers beneath. The divers moved slowly, their lights sweeping across the structure. Cameras clicked and whirred, capturing images that would later be scrutinized by experts around the world. But in that moment, beneath the weight of the sea, analysis seemed distant and irrelevant. What mattered was the experience, the uncanny sensation of being in the presence of something that did not belong.
One diver described a series of linear grooves along the object's surface, running parallel to each other with mechanical precision. Another noted what appeared to be steps, or something resembling steps, carved into one side, leading up to a flat platform. Still another pointed out a circular indentation near the center, smooth and deep, like a hatch or portal long since sealed. But perhaps the strangest detail of all was the way the object seemed to merge with the seabed itself. In some areas, the boundary between the structure and the surrounding sediment was clear and defined. In others, it blurred, as if the object had been there so long that the ocean floor had begun to reclaim it, or as if the object itself was slowly sinking, dissolving, returning to the earth from which it came. The composition defied easy classification. Initial assessments suggested basalt, a volcanic rock common in underwater formations, but there were inconsistencies. Sections of the object appeared to contain metallic inclusions, fragments of iron or other minerals that glinted in the dive lights. Other areas seemed almost organic, covered in a film or coating that did not match any known marine growth. One diver collected samples, scraping carefully at the surface and sealing the fragments in waterproof containers. Later analysis would reveal a complex mixture of materials, primarily volcanic rock, yes, but also traces of elements that did not fit the profile of a simple geological formation. The results were inconclusive, raising more questions than they answered. But it was not just the physical structure that unsettled the divers. It was the feeling. Several members of the team reported a sense of disorientation near the object, a subtle vertigo that seemed unrelated to depth or nitrogen levels. Others noted that their equipment behaved strangely. Dive computers flickered, compasses spun without settling, and communication devices crackled with static that had no obvious source. One diver, a veteran with thousands of hours underwater, later admitted that he had felt watched. Not by anything visible, not by any presence he could name, but by the object itself, as if it were aware of their intrusion and simply waiting, silent and patient, for them to leave. They did not stay long. The depth and the cold limited their time, and there was only so much they could document in a single dive. But as they ascended, rising slowly through the layers of black water back toward the distant glow of daylight, each of them carried the same unspoken thought. Whatever it was, it had been there a long time, and it was not going anywhere. Back on the surface, the data was transmitted, analyzed, debated. Marine scientists pored over the images, measuring angles and assessing texture. Geologists compared the samples to known rock formations from the region. Engineers examined the electromagnetic readings recorded near the site, trying to understand the anomalies that had disrupted the divers' equipment. The results were frustrating in their ambiguity. The sonar data confirmed the object's size and shape, but sonar is an imperfect tool. It reveals outlines, not details. It shows shadows, not substance. The images suggested symmetry, but symmetry can be an artifact of interpretation. The human mind is wired to find patterns, even where none exist. But the electromagnetic readings were harder to dismiss. Multiple instruments had recorded disturbances near the object, fluctuations in the local magnetic field that could not be explained by the presence of metallic ore alone. Compasses, which should have pointed steadily north, wavered and spun. Electronic devices flickered or shut down entirely. One diver's camera had stopped recording mid-dive.
its memory card corrupted in ways that suggested exposure to a strong electromagnetic pulse. Scientists proposed several explanations. The Baltic Sea is geologically complex, with volcanic formations and mineral deposits that can create localized magnetic anomalies. The object itself, if composed of basalt with high iron content, could generate a weak magnetic field. And the equipment failures might be coincidental. Diving technology is sensitive, and malfunctions are not uncommon in the harsh environment of deep water. But the pattern of failures was unusual. Equipment had worked perfectly during the descent and ascent. It was only in proximity to the object that problems occurred. And the disturbances were not random. They seemed to intensify near certain sections of the structure, particularly around the circular indentation that some had called a hatch.
Temperature readings added another layer of mystery. The water surrounding the object was measurably colder than the surrounding seabed, not dramatically, but enough to be detected by sensitive instruments. Thermoclines are common in the ocean, layers of water with different temperatures stacking atop one another like invisible sheets. But this cold zone seemed to radiate from the object itself, as if it were absorbing heat or perhaps emitting a faint, cold energy that dissipated into the surrounding water. One physicist reviewing the data noted that the temperature differential was consistent with certain types of radioactive decay, not dangerous levels, but present nonetheless. He suggested that the object might contain trace amounts of naturally occurring radioactive minerals, which would explain both the temperature anomaly and the electromagnetic disturbances. It was a reasonable hypothesis, but it did not account for everything. There was also the sound. During one of the later dives, a team member had deployed a hydrophone, an underwater microphone designed to capture acoustic signals. Most of what it recorded was the expected background noise of the ocean, the distant thrum of ship engines, the clicking of marine life, the low groaning of the seabed as it settled and shifted. But at one point, when the hydrophone was positioned directly above the object, it picked up something else, a pulse. Low frequency, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It lasted only a few seconds before fading back into the ambient noise, but it was unmistakable. The frequency was analyzed later, revealing a pattern, not random, but structured, repeating at intervals that seemed too regular to be natural. Some suggested it was the sound of the object itself, resonating in response to the movements of the divers or the pressure changes caused by their descent. Others thought it might be an echo from a distant source, refracted through the water and distorted by the object's shape. But a quiet few, wondered if the object was not entirely inert, if it still functioned in some small way, even after all this time, if it was still alive. The theories multiplied like organisms in a petri dish, each one feeding on fragments of data and gaps in understanding. Geologists assembled their case first, laying out the evidence for a natural origin with the careful precision of their discipline.
The Baltic Sea, they explained, is a graveyard of the Ice Age. Thousands of years ago, massive glaciers covered northern Europe, carving through bedrock and carrying enormous boulders across hundreds of miles. As the ice melted, these boulders, some as large as houses, were deposited in seemingly random locations, often in clusters or lines that can appear deliberate to the untrained eye. The phenomenon is well documented, and the Baltic seabed is littered with such formations. The object, they argued, was likely one of these glacial erratics. Its circular shape could be explained by erosion, water and time smoothing the edges of a once jagged boulder into something more uniform. The trail behind it might mark the path of the glacier that carried it, a groove carved into the soft sediment by the immense weight and slow movement of the ice. The grooves and steps observed by the divers could be natural fractures, planes of weakness in the rock where sections had split away over millennia. Basalt, in particular, often fractures in columnar patterns, creating geometric shapes that can resemble artificial construction. The Giant's Causeway in Ireland is a famous example. Thousands of hexagonal columns of basalt, so regular and precise that legend once attributed them to the work of giants. But they are entirely natural, formed by the slow cooling of volcanic lava. It was a compelling argument, grounded in established science and supported by observable phenomena. The evidence fit. The explanation worked. And yet, even the geologists admitted that certain details were unusual. The symmetry of the object was more pronounced than most glacial erratics. The grooves were more regular. The trail was longer and deeper than would be expected from glacial transport alone. And the electromagnetic disturbances, while explicable, were stronger and more localized than the iron content alone would suggest. One geologist, speaking off the record, acknowledged a lingering discomfort. "Nature can create remarkable things," he said, "but usually, when you look closely, you can see the randomness, the chaos that underlies even the most ordered structures. It's almost too perfect. Like something that was trying very hard to look natural." But that, of course, was speculation. And speculation is not science. Others proposed different explanations, moving away from geology and toward human history. Archaeologists pointed to the long and complex past, a region where civilizations have risen and fallen for thousands of years. Could the object be a remnant of some ancient construction, now submerged and forgotten?
There are precedents. The Baltic Sea has swallowed entire settlements, drowned by rising water levels in the centuries following the last ice age. Stone structures, harbors, even megalithic monuments have been found beneath the waves, their purpose and builders lost to time. The object could be a ceremonial platform, a burial cairn, or even a fragment of a larger structure that has since eroded away. The circular shape might indicate a ritual site, similar to the stone circles found across northern Europe. The grooves could be intentional carvings, symbolic or functional, designed by people whose culture we no longer remember. And the trail might not be a trail at all, but rather a collapsed causeway or pathway that once connected the site to the shore, now hidden beneath sediment and time. It was an intriguing possibility, and it offered a middle ground between the purely natural and the outright impossible. It allowed for mystery without requiring a departure from known history. It suggested that the object was both real and understandable, a puzzle that could eventually be solved by careful excavation and analysis. But archaeology, like geology, requires evidence. And the evidence was frustratingly sparse.
No artifacts had been found near the object, no tools or pottery or signs of human activity. The samples collected from the surface showed no marks of human tool use, no signs of deliberate shaping beyond what erosion might accomplish. If the object was built by ancient hands, those hands had left no fingerprints.
And then there were the others, the ones who looked at the sonar images, at the diver reports, at the electromagnetic readings and the acoustic pulse, and saw not a rock or a ruin, but something else entirely. A machine. The idea is not as outlandish as it might first appear. The ocean floor is littered with human-made objects, ships, planes, submarines, even satellites that fell from orbit and sank into the deep. Most are easily identified, their origins traceable through records and wreckage. But some are not. Some rest in places where they should not be, in forms that defy easy explanation. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, proponents of this theory argued, resembled nothing so much as a crashed craft. The circular shape, the symmetry, the apparent hatch or portal, the long trail marking a violent descent, all of it fit the profile of a vehicle that had lost control and impacted the seabed with tremendous force. But if it was a vehicle, it was unlike any known to modern technology. The size alone was staggering, 60 meters across, far larger than most submarines or experimental craft. The materials were wrong, too primitive and too advanced at the same time. And most damning of all, there were no obvious signs of propulsion, no engines or fuel tanks, no control surfaces or hatches that could be clearly identified. Unless, of course, the technology was so far beyond our own that we simply could not recognize it.
This is where the theory veers into speculation, into the realm of the unproven and the unprovable. But it is a speculation that refuses to disappear, sustained by a growing catalog of similar anomalies around the world. In the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of California, sonar surveys have detected what appear to be linear formations on the seabed, long, straight lines of raised material too regular to be natural, connecting circular structures at precise intervals. Some researchers have suggested they are ancient roads or aqueducts, remnants of lost civilizations. Others believe they are something else, a network of sites arranged with purpose and precision by intelligences unknown. In the Bermuda Triangle, divers have photographed underwater structures that resemble pyramids or stepped platforms, their surfaces covered in marine growth, but their geometry still visible. The structures are dismissed by mainstream archaeology as natural formations, misinterpreted by enthusiastic amateurs. But the dismissals feel too quick, too certain, as if the very idea of their significance is uncomfortable. And in the Baltic itself, other anomalies have been reported. Circular depressions in the seabed, perfectly round and evenly spaced, as if something had landed there repeatedly, pressing into the soft mud before departing. Magnetic anomalies that appear and disappear without explanation. Acoustic signals that seem to pulse from deep beneath the sediment, too regular to be random, but too faint to analyze. The Baltic Sea Anomaly in this context is not an isolated mystery. It is part of a pattern, a thread in a larger tapestry that suggests the ocean floor is not as empty or as well understood as we like to believe. Could it be a spacecraft? A probe sent from elsewhere, damaged or decommissioned, left to rest in the cold silence of the deep? Could it be a remnant of a technology humanity once possessed and then forgot,
buried beneath the waves when sea levels rose and civilizations fell? Or could it simply be a rock, worn smooth by time and chance, onto which we project our hopes and fears and questions? Because the alternative, that we are alone, that the universe is silent, that the ocean holds nothing but geology and history, is somehow more unsettling than the idea of visitors from beyond.
The myths are older than the science. Long before sonar and submersibles, before diving equipment and underwater photography, human beings looked at the ocean and knew, instinctively, that it held secrets. The sea was a boundary, a threshold between the known world and the realm of gods and monsters, of drowned cities and forgotten kings. In Greek mythology, Poseidon ruled the depths, and beneath his waves lay wonders and horrors in equal measure. The lost city of Atlantis, described by Plato, was a civilization of unparalleled advancement, destroyed in a single day and night of catastrophe, swallowed whole by the sea. For millennia, scholars have debated whether Atlantis was a real place, a metaphor, or a cautionary tale. But the myth persists because it speaks to something deeper, the idea that greatness can be lost, that entire worlds can sink beneath the waves, leaving only fragments and whispers behind. In the Pacific, the myth of Lemuria or Mu tells a similar story, a vast continent home to an ancient and advanced civilization, now submerged and forgotten. Some claim it was destroyed by natural disaster, others by war, and a few suggest it was abandoned deliberately, its people retreating to the stars or the inner earth as the waters rose. And in the Baltic itself, local legends speak of submerged lands, of kingdoms drowned by angry gods or rising seas. Fishermen tell stories of hearing bells ringing from beneath the water, of seeing lights in the depths where no light should be, of nets that come up empty except for strange stones, smooth and shaped, that seem to belong to no known place. Could the Baltic Sea Anomaly be a remnant of such a civilization? Not Atlantis, perhaps, but something similar, a culture that thrived in the distant past before recorded history, before the ice melted and the seas rose and the old world was drowned. A people who built with stone and metal, who understood geometry and magnetism, who left behind structures that now rest in silence, slowly dissolving into the ocean floor. The archaeological record is full of surprises. Every few years, a new site is discovered that pushes back the timeline of human civilization, revealing complexity and sophistication in eras once thought primitive. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a massive stone temple complex over 11,000 years old, predates agriculture and challenges our understanding of prehistoric society. The submerged ruins off the coast of India near Dwarka suggest the existence of advanced maritime cultures thousands of years before conventional history acknowledges them. If such civilizations existed, they would have been vulnerable to the same cataclysms that shaped the end of the Ice Age: rising sea levels, climate shifts, geological upheavals. Many of their greatest works might now rest beneath hundreds of feet of water, inaccessible and invisible, mistaken for natural formations by those who do not know where to look or what to see. The Baltic Sea Anomaly could be one such work, a temple perhaps, a monument, a navigation marker or astronomical observatory built by people whose names have been erased by time. Its purpose might have been sacred or practical, scientific or symbolic, but whatever it was important enough to be built with care and durable enough to survive the ages.
Or perhaps, as a few researchers quietly suggest, it was built by someone or something that was not human at all.
The line between lost civilization and extraterrestrial artifact is thinner than we might think. Both require us to accept that the past was stranger and more complex than the official story allows. Both suggest that the world is full of hidden histories, waiting to be uncovered. And both challenge the comfortable assumption that we are the pinnacle of progress, the most advanced beings ever to walk or swim the earth. If ancient cultures could achieve the seemingly impossible, carving megaliths and aligning them with celestial precision, then why not visitors from elsewhere, leaving behind their own markers, their own monuments, for reasons we can only imagine? The object rests in the dark, indifferent to our theories. It does not care whether we call it a rock, or a ruin, or a relic from beyond. It simply is, and has been, for longer than we can measure. And perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. But for every theory that reaches toward the extraordinary, there is a voice calling back toward the ordinary. The skeptics, the rationalists, the scientists who insist that the world is strange enough without inventing new mysteries where none exist. Marine geologists returned to the site, armed with better equipment and clearer questions. They conducted more detailed sonar scans, using multi-beam technology that could map the seabed with far greater precision. They analyzed the shape of the object from every angle, comparing it to known geological formations in the region and beyond. Their conclusion was measured, but firm. The Baltic Sea Anomaly was most likely a natural formation, a product of volcanic activity and glacial transport, worn by millennia of currents and sedimentation into a shape that only appeared deliberate. The trail behind the object, they explained, was not a crash site, but a glacial groove, a common feature in areas once covered by ice. As glaciers move, they drag boulders across the seabed, carving deep furrows in the soft sediment. When the ice melts, the boulder is deposited at the end of the trail, exactly as seen here. The grooves and linear features on the object's surface were consistent with natural fracturing patterns in basalt. The circular shape could be explained by differential erosion, areas of harder rock resisting the abrasive action of water and sand, while softer sections wore away more quickly, creating the illusion of deliberate design. Even the electromagnetic anomalies, they argued, were within the range of natural phenomena. The Baltic Sea is geologically active, with fault lines and mineral deposits that can generate weak magnetic fields. The equipment failures experienced by the divers were likely coincidental, the result of cold water affecting battery performance and electronic seals, rather than any mysterious energy emanating from the object. One geologist put it bluntly, "We see what we want to see. If you go into the ocean expecting to find a UFO, then every rock looks like a spacecraft. But the evidence, when examined carefully and without bias, points to a natural origin." It was a fair criticism. Human perception is notoriously unreliable, shaped by expectation and cultural context. The same ambiguous image can be interpreted in wildly different ways, depending on the observer's assumptions. The Rorschach test relies on this principle. Abstract shapes become meaningful only through the lens of the viewer's mind. And yet, skepticism can become its own form of bias. The insistence that everything must have a conventional explanation, that the world contains no genuine mysteries, can blind us to possibilities that lie outside the established framework.
Science progresses not by dismissing the anomalous, but by investigating it, by allowing the data to lead where it will, even if that destination is uncomfortable. The skeptics had answers, yes, but their answers did not account for everything. They could not explain the acoustic pulse, the low-frequency heartbeat recorded by the hydrophone. They offered no mechanism for the temperature differential, beyond vague references to radioactive decay that were never substantiated. And they could not reconcile the object's striking symmetry with the randomness that usually characterizes natural erosion. More troubling still, some of the geologists who had examined the site firsthand admitted, in private conversations, that the object made them uneasy. Not because it defied explanation, nature is full of formations that challenge understanding, but because it occupied a strange middle ground, neither clearly natural nor obviously artificial. One researcher described it as liminal, a word usually applied to spaces that exist between categories, thresholds that belong fully to neither side. The object was liminal in that sense, caught between explanations, refusing to settle comfortably into any single narrative. And in that uncertainty, in that refusal to be easily categorized, the mystery persisted. Science had done its job. It had collected data, proposed hypotheses, tested them against evidence. But science, for all its power, cannot answer questions that lie beyond the reach of its instruments. It can tell us what the object is made of, how old it might be, what forces shaped it. But it cannot tell us why it feels wrong, why it unsettles, why, even in photographs, it seems to watch back. Those are questions for another kind of inquiry, one that lives in the space between fact and feeling, between measurement and meaning. And the ocean, as always, keeps its counsel.
Then came the second wave of expeditions, years after the initial discovery, driven by new technology and a renewed interest. Advanced sensors were deployed, capable of detecting radiation levels, chemical composition, and even faint electromagnetic fields that earlier equipment might have missed. The results were unexpected. Radiation levels near the object were slightly elevated, not dangerously so, but measurably above background levels. The isotopes detected were consistent with naturally occurring elements like potassium-40 and uranium-238, both common in volcanic rock, but the concentration was higher than would be expected from basalt alone, suggesting the presence of other minerals or materials not yet identified. More intriguing were the acoustic measurements. High-resolution hydrophones, positioned at various points around the object, recorded a series of low-frequency signals that seemed to emanate from beneath the structure itself. The signals were faint, barely distinguishable from background noise, but their pattern was unmistakable, a rhythmic pulse, repeating at intervals of approximately 1.8 seconds. Acoustic resonance, the scientists explained, can occur when water flows through cavities or porous rock, creating vibrations that propagate through the surrounding medium. Coral reefs, underwater caves, even certain types of sediment can produce such sounds. But this pulse was different. It did not vary with current or tide. It did not fade or strengthen based on environmental conditions. It simply continued, steady and unchanging, like a clock ticking in the dark. One physicist proposed that the object might contain internal chambers or voids, spaces where water flows in and out with each tidal cycle, creating pressure changes that generate the acoustic signal.
It was a plausible explanation, supported by similar phenomena observed in underwater volcanic formations. But it did not explain why the frequency was so precise. Natural systems tend toward variation, their rhythms influenced by countless factors that create irregularity and drift. This signal showed no such variation. It was, in the parlance of signal analysis, suspiciously regular.
In this interpretation, the object was not alive, not functional in any intentional sense. It was simply a passive structure that happened to interact with its environment in unusual ways, like a seashell that captures the sound of the ocean. But even that explanation left questions. If the object was merely a resonator, why was the signal so focused? Why did it seem to emanate from the object rather than from the surrounding seabed? And why, when divers approached, did some of them report feeling vibrations in their bodies, faint tremors that seemed to synchronize with the acoustic pulse? Subjective experience, the scientists cautioned, is not reliable evidence. The human body is sensitive to suggestion, to expectation. Divers operating at depth, under stress and cold and nitrogen narcosis, are prone to misperception. The vibrations they felt could have been physiological artifacts, the result of their own heartbeat or breathing rhythm, projected outward onto the environment. Or they could have been real. The energy beneath, if energy it was, remained elusive. It could not be measured directly, could not be isolated or reproduced in controlled conditions. It existed only in the accumulated reports of those who had been there, in the data points that did not quite align with the models, in the feeling that something about the site was subtly, persistently wrong. One researcher, summarizing the findings in a conference presentation, chose his words carefully. "We have documented anomalies that currently lack full explanation. This does not mean the object is artificial or non-terrestrial. It means our understanding is incomplete. The ocean is full of phenomena we do not yet comprehend, and this may simply be another example. Further study is required." It was the safest possible conclusion, the kind that invites continued funding without committing to any controversial claim. But in the hallways after the presentation, the conversations were less guarded. The researchers who had spent the most time at the site, who had dived the deepest and stayed the longest, spoke in quieter tones about the things they had seen and felt, but could not quantify. They spoke about the way the water felt different near the object, heavier somehow, as if the space itself had been altered. They mentioned the dreams that followed, vivid and strange, filled with images of corridors and lights and shapes that moved just beyond the edge of vision. And they acknowledged, with reluctance and discomfort, that they could not shake the feeling that the object was not inert, that something within it or beneath it still functioned, still waited, still, perhaps, listened.
The ocean is the world's memory. It holds within its depths the accumulated history of the planet, every creature that ever swam or sank, every ship that ever foundered, every civilization that built too close to the shore and was reclaimed by the rising tide. The sediment layers are a library, each stratum a page recording the climate and chemistry and catastrophes of ages past. But memory is not the same as knowledge. The ocean remembers, but it does not explain. It preserves, but it does not reveal. To extract meaning from the deep requires interpretation, and interpretation is always incomplete, always shaped by the questions we bring with us and the frameworks we use to make sense of what we find. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is a memory the ocean has kept for us, a fragment of something, geological, archaeological, or otherwise, that has survived the passage of time. But what that fragment represents depends on who is looking and what they are willing to see. For the geologist, it is a story of fire and ice, of volcanic rock carried by glaciers and deposited in a place where it now rests, slowly dissolving back into the seabed from which it came. It is a reminder that the Earth's surface is fluid, constantly reshaped by forces operating on timescales so vast that human lifetimes are barely perceptible. For the archaeologist, it is a tantalizing possibility, a suggestion that the past was richer and stranger than the textbooks acknowledge. It is a call to look deeper, to question assumptions, to consider that civilizations might have risen and fallen in eras we thought devoid of complexity. It is a challenge to the narrative of linear progress, a hint that knowledge can be lost as easily as it is gained. For the true believer, it is validation, proof that we are not alone, that the universe is populated and active, that visitors have come to Earth and left their marks in places we are only now beginning to explore. It is a symbol of possibility, a crack in the wall of official denial, a sign that the truth is out there, buried beneath the waves, waiting for those brave enough to seek it. And for the skeptic, it is a cautionary tale, a reminder of how easily ambiguity can be mistaken for mystery, how pattern-seeking minds can impose order on chaos, how the desire for the extraordinary can blind us to the ordinary explanations that lie right in front of us. All of these interpretations are, in their way, true, and none of them alone is sufficient. Because the object itself, indifferent to our theories and labels, continues to rest in the cold darkness, shaped by forces we may never fully understand, holding secrets that may or may not exist, embodying questions that may or may not have answers. The ocean remembers everything, but it does not judge. It does not clarify. It simply holds and waits and lets the currents slowly erase the boundaries between what is known and what is imagined.
Perhaps that is its greatest gift to us, not certainty, but the space to wonder, not answers, but the permission to ask, not closure, but the ongoing invitation to look deeper, to question more, to accept that some mysteries are meant to remain unresolved, existing in the liminal space between explanation and experience. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is such a mystery. It is real, documented, measured, photographed, but its meaning remains fluid, shifting with each new piece of data, each new theory, each new person who looks at the images and decides what they see. And in that shifting, in that refusal to settle into a single narrative, it becomes something more than a rock, or a ruin, or a craft. It becomes a mirror, reflecting back our own questions about the world and our place in it.
What do we want to find in the deep? What are we afraid of discovering? And what would it mean if the ocean, after all this time, finally gave up one of its secrets in a form we could understand? These are not questions with answers. They are questions that live in the asking, that grow richer with contemplation, that connect the ancient and the modern, the terrestrial and the cosmic, the seen and the unseen. The object lies in the dark, and the dark holds it close, and in that holding, in that silence, there is a kind of truth, not the truth of facts and figures, but the truth of uncertainty, of awe, of the vast and unknowable depths that surround us, both in the ocean and within ourselves.
As the years passed, the Baltic Sea Anomaly faded from headlines, as all mysteries eventually do. New discoveries captured public attention, new theories replaced the old, and the object returned to its quiet existence on the seabed, visited occasionally by researchers, but largely left alone. But those who had been there, who had seen it firsthand, did not forget. One diver, years after his last visit to the site, wrote a short essay about the experience. He described the descent as a kind of pilgrimage, a journey not just through water, but through layers of certainty and doubt. When you're on the surface, he wrote, everything is clear. You have your equipment, your training, your theories. You know what you're looking for and why. But as you descend, as the light fades and the pressure builds, all of that clarity dissolves. By the time you reach the object, you're not a scientist or an explorer anymore. You're just a human being, small and fragile, confronted with something you don't understand. And in that moment, the categories fall away. It doesn't matter whether it's a rock or a ruin or a ship from the stars. What matters is the feeling, the sense that you have touched something outside the normal course of things, something that exists on its own terms, indifferent to your explanations. He ended the essay with a question. If we found incontrovertible proof tomorrow that the object was natural, would that diminish its power? Or would it remain, regardless of origin, a symbol of everything we don't know about the world beneath the waves? It is a question worth considering, because the value of a mystery is not always in its solution. Sometimes the value is in the mystery itself, in the way it unsettles us, challenges us, reminds us that the universe is larger and stranger than our models can capture. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, whether it is a glacial erratic or an ancient temple or a crashed probe from another world, has done what all good mysteries do. It has made us look deeper, question harder, and confront the limits of our knowledge. And perhaps, in the end, that is enough. The object rests in the dark, and the currents move around it, and the sediment falls like slow snow, covering and uncovering its surface in endless cycles. Divers will come and go, cameras will flash, sonar will ping, and theories will rise and fall like tides. But the object will remain, patient and silent, holding whatever secrets it holds, or holding nothing at all, simply being what it is, a piece of the world that we have not yet learned to see clearly. The ocean does not answer our questions. It only reflects them back, distorted and magnified, turned strange by depth and darkness. And in that strangeness, we find ourselves.
Welcome back to the surface. The light is bright here, almost harsh after so long in the deep. The world above the water feels suddenly loud, full of motion and noise and certainty. But beneath, in the cold silence, the object remains. It has been there for longer than we know. It will be there long after we stop looking. And whether it is a stone worn smooth by time, a monument raised by forgotten hands, or something else entirely, a message, a marker, a machine, it has given us something precious. It has given us wonder. Wonder is a rare thing in the modern world, where so much has been mapped and measured and explained. We live in an age of answers, where information is instant and mysteries are treated as problems to be solved rather than experiences to be savored. But beneath, in the cold silence, the object remains. It has been there for longer than we know. It will be there long after we stop looking. And whether it is a stone worn smooth by time, a monument raised by forgotten hands, or something else entirely, a message, a marker, a machine, it has given us something precious. It has given us wonder. Wonder is a rare thing in the modern world, where so much has been mapped and measured and explained. We live in an age of answers, where information is instant and mysteries are treated as problems to be solved rather than experiences to be savored. But the deep ocean, with its pressure and darkness and silence, resists our attempts at total understanding. It remains a place where the unknown still flourishes, where the impossible might still hide, where a single sonar image can crack open the comfortable certainty of our worldview and let something else seep in.
The Baltic Sea Anomaly is one such crack. It is small, perhaps insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it is enough to make us pause, enough to make us question, enough to remind us that the world is still full of places we have not explored, depths we have not reached, stories we have not yet heard. Some of those stories may turn out to be mundane, the products of geology and time. Others may reveal histories we thought lost, cultures we did not know existed, and a few, a precious, tantalizing few, may point towards something beyond our current understanding, something that changes the way we see ourselves and our place in the cosmos.
We do not know which category the Baltic Sea Anomaly belongs to. Perhaps we never will. But in the not knowing, in the ambiguity and uncertainty, there is a kind of freedom. The freedom to imagine, to speculate, to dream. The freedom to look at an image on a screen and see not just a rock on the seabed, but a doorway to possibilities we have not yet dared to name. The ocean holds its memories close, but sometimes, if we listen carefully, if we descend far enough and stay quiet long enough, it shares them with us, not in words or explanations, but in fragments and echoes, in shapes that emerge from the dark and then fade back into it, leaving us changed in ways we cannot quite articulate. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is such a fragment. It is an echo from the deep, a shape in the darkness, a question without an answer. And that is exactly as it should be. Thank you for drifting with us into the unknown, for descending through these dark waters to the place where certainty dissolves and wonder takes its place. If this story has stirred something within you, curiosity, doubt, or that strange, nameless feeling that comes from brushing against a mystery that will not be tamed, then we have done what we set out to do. The ocean is vast, and its secrets are many. This is only one of them. There are others waiting in the deep, in places we have not yet looked or have looked but not truly seen. Perhaps you will be among those who find them. Perhaps you will descend into the cold black water and encounter something that defies explanation, something that changes the way you see the world. Or perhaps you will simply remember, on quiet nights when the world seems too certain and too small, that there are still places where the unknown thrives, places where stones might be monuments, where silence might be speech, where a shape on a sonar screen might be the beginning of a story that has no end. We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think lies at the bottom of the Baltic Sea? What secrets do you believe the ocean keeps? And what mysteries would you most like to see explored? Until we meet again in the depths, stay curious, stay open, and remember that the world is stranger and more beautiful than we dare to imagine. The object waits, patient and silent in the dark, and the dark, as always, holds more than we know.